Hi friends, it's Becky and I am going to be making a necklace using this component that I made with y'all. I have a video for this that I made a couple of days ago and I'm going to be using it in a necklace, and that's what this video is. I will put a link in the description to the video where I made this component so I can walk you through that. I'll also, when I get to the point where I add this to my necklace, I'll show you how you can, if you don't want to make one of these, also make the rest of this necklace just without this. So we'll get to that when we get to that. And I did just want to kind of point out that this also makes really great earrings. So I had a lot of fun making this and coming up with it. And I hope if you decide to make one, you have some fun with it too. But I am going to be using some more of the beads and components and findings and things that came in the Potomac Beads Best Bead Box. This is the Treasure Edition for May. It's the Whispers of Antiquity bead box, and I'm just going to set this aside because we won't need that yet. And so I'm going to be using some more of these Potomac pearls. I'm pretty sure I'm going to use all the Potomac pearls that came in this box before the end of this is done. I'm also going to be using more of these 8/0 seed beads. I'm going to be using these 7mm fire polish beads that came in there, and these 10mm beads that have this lovely matte finish on them. So we're going to be doing those, and I'm going to be making a necklace with all of these. And I'm also going to be adding along the back side of it just some curb chain and a lobster clasp so that I can fudge the size a little bit. It won't have to be completely specific. And the plan is to do some netting, and to do that I'm going to be using two different stringing materials. I'm going to be using some beading wire to string the base of the necklace with some beads, and then I'm going to be using some thread, beading thread. I'm using the dragon thread here, and we'll use that to do our netting off of the base as it goes down, because I watched the first 4 episodes of Bridgerton season 3 this last weekend, and I am obsessed with this necklace. Obsessed with it. So I'm going to be doing some netting. We're going to be using pearls. It's not going to be exactly like this. It's going to be just inspired by, but I'm just warning you, this is probably not the only necklace design that is going to be inspired by that necklace that I'm going to be doing in the near future. So get ready for more netting. And this one is going to be a bead weaving type netting. I may do another one where we use some wire. I don't know. We'll figure that out when we get to it. But this one, we're going to be definitely doing this. So I have a beading needle that I'm going to be using with my thread. I also have some snips to cut my beading wire with, or my beading thread with. So I'll be using that tool with my beading cable, my beading wire, not my beading thread. I have got some 2x2 crimp tubes, my magical crimper. It's my favorite way of crimping. And I've got some wire cutters. So these are the tools that we're going to be using for this, for the most part. So let's get the first part done, and that's going to be stringing. I also have this. It is one of the like the bead stoppers that we've got. They sent us some of these in the bead boxes, so it's really convenient for us to have. If you haven't got one of those, maybe you'll get one in one of the other bead boxes. I don't know. But I'm going to just start stringing from the end, and that way I can go ahead and clip the end of it before we get around to making everything together, so that if I need to fudge the size a little bit, or if I need to add a few more beads on the ends of it, I can do that. All right, so I think the way that I want this stringing to go is 5-ish inches are going to be using some of these pearls, the 8/0s, and these fire polish beads. And then we'll have another 5 to 6 inches that, instead of these fire polish beads, I'm going to be using these guys up here. And then we're going to switch back to the other ones, and that should give us about 15 inches of necklace to work with, and that is about choker length for me. But again, we're going to be using some curb chain, so it doesn't have to be exactly 15 inches. It could be a little bit longer, it could be a little bit shorter. It's going to be just fine. But this is the order that I want to go in. I just want these seed beads to be little spacers between each of these elements on this strung portion. And this is going to be probably the easiest part of this, although in my opinion the netting part is pretty easy too. It's not going to be a super complicated bead weaving design. You're not going to have to go in and out and over and around and add embellishments. It's going to be really straightforward with the beading thread. So if you're hesitant or you're new to bead weaving, it might be a good place for you to start. Because I know this design was probably a little heavy on the bead weaving. It might not be a great place to start if you're new, although I think it wasn't that hard to follow along. You just have to make sure you go into the right holes, and it's basically just going around in a circle a bunch of times and adding things as you go. Oh, I missed a seed bead. Let me try getting that in there. But like I said, if you don't want to make the pendant that I'm using for this necklace, you can just do the thing that I will be showing you later. And just as a spoiler alert, we're gonna grab one of these other beads from the bead box. It's gonna be this guy. When we get to that part of it, but yeah, I just want to make sure that I've got one of these 8/0 seed beads in between each of my beads. And we're just alternating the purple bead and the pearl. Okay, so here is where we've got this first part done. It's going to be 1/3 of the necklace. And now I'm going to add these big guys in with a pearl and some seed beads in between them. This necklace is going to be the base that we're going to be doing our netting from. And I'll show you how to get that started once we've got these all strung on here. That's not right. That should have been one of these guys. And I just spent like all that time trying to get in the hole on that pearl. There we go. This will be along the front of the necklace. Honestly, this necklace, even without the netting, is gonna be pretty great looking before we start adding things to it. You could just string it and leave it like that. I'm not going to, because I have this idea that I'm obsessed with, and so I'm going to be continuing on with it. But if you wanted to just stop after you get these beads strung on and say, hey, that's good, nobody's going to stop you. There's no bead police. All right, so now we are back to the final third, where we're moving back to these 7mm fire polish beads. I love it already. I was actually not going to film this today because one of the things that I like to do during a 3-day weekend is select one of those days to do absolutely nothing with, just to maybe read, relax, just not to do anything that I might think of as work, for instance. And, you know, even though I enjoy making jewelry, and it gives me a lot of fulfillment, and it helps like me put my brain in order, especially after like a really long day or a hard week or something like that. I still like making content rather than, you know, just doing jewelry. It is a little bit of work, guys. So if I was going to just have a day where I wasn't going to do anything, I wasn't going to be making content either. So since I was inspired to do this, I actually just got done watching some other YouTubers. They had a live and it was really great, and just such a pleasant way to spend the afternoon. I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go ahead and make this because I just didn't want to put it off anymore. I love my idea and I want to see it fulfilled. And, see how great that's going to look? Even without the netting? Am I going to ruin it? Am I going to ruin it with the netting? No, I'm going to make it better. It's not going to be ruined. All right. Now, here's something I may have mentioned before, that I often use my this to measure things. From this end of the wood to this end of the wood over here is exactly 15 inches. So I am about 2 inches short. So I'm just going to stack up the back of it with, let's give ourselves about 10 of these. 7, 8, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, that's 14. 14 of them. Is that going to be enough? Maybe. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and crimp this end, since it's going to end up being long enough. Maybe, yeah. And like I said, I've got the curb chain so that we can fudge the length if we need to. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp my lobster clasp to one end. By putting on my crimp tube, going through my lobster clasp, and then bending this back through the crimp tube. And then I'm going to use, again, the magical crimper. This is a 0.018 beading wire, so it will work for this. That's what this crimper is designed for. I'll just have to open it up and rotate it, and then open it up and rotate it and give it a little squish just from different angles, and that smushes down those sharp edges of the crimp and it gives us a good hold on there. Let me add some beads. I think it was 14 of these. Pretty sure it was 14. Because I was counting and then I counted too many. Could just have it, hold it to the side next to it. That's also a good way of making sure that you have the same amount of beads. So that in case your brain is like, no, I don't want to deal with numbers right now, you can just make sure that it is the same amount on that end as on the other. And instead of crimping this now, I'm just going to pop this on here just to hold on to that, and I will crimp it on there later after we get this part done. All right, so for this part, we are going to be doing some netting, and this is going to require these pearls, the Potomac pearls. And more of these 8/0 seed beads. So I'm just going to get all the rest of these pearls off of here. I'm just going to make sure that I have or will have enough for all of this. It's a good idea to lay out what you're going to do. There's going to be one pearl just below each of these. It's going to be the start of my netting. And then when you do the netting, they'll be offset. So if there are 7 pearls up here, the next row there will only be 6 because they go in between those pearls. And then the next row there will only be 5, and they'll go in between those pearls. And the next row there will only be 4, and they'll go in between these pearls. And I've done netting before in another tutorial. With that one, instead of a base that was a strung piece of jewelry, I had the base that we worked from be Silver Silk, the flat mesh. And I'll put a link to that tutorial in the description below if you'd like to see it. Okay, so here's the row where it's just 2 beads. And then the next row, this bottom row, is going to be where I will be adding my focal. So that is going to be enough pearls for this whole enterprise, this whole situation right there. And that's just laying it out so you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to end up sort of looking like before we get it finished. And I'm definitely going to need a whole lot more of these 8/0 seed beads. All right. So to get this started, let me again move this out of the way because we're not going to need that yet. And let's move these pearls a little bit out of the way so that we'll be able to maybe get in here a little bit better and see what we're doing with these smaller beads. And I'm just going to thread my needle. Again, I'm using the dragon thread, and I'm just going to pull a wingspan's worth. I'm going to hold this in my left hand and this in my right hand. And I'm just going to spread my arms as far apart as I can. And that's my wingspan. Gonna give this a snip. just going to smush the end of this a little bit to make it stiffer and flatter to go through the bead needle. That wasn't a good smush. There you go, that's a better smush. There you go. So now that that is on there, I'm going to pick up 5 8/0 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. 1 pearl. This is going to be something that we're going to do a lot of for the rest of this, is picking up 5 seed beads and a pearl, and then 5 more seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and you remember how I said that these pearls were going to be right underneath these larger beads? I'm going to sew, if I'm looking at this over here and I'm starting from the right, I'm going to work from right to left on this row. And so going from right to left, I'm going to put my needle through this bead right here from left to right. And I just want to put it through that large bead. And I'm going to pull this through until I've got maybe 4 or 5 inches of tail thread left. And then I'm going to stop. Stop right there. And I'm going to go back through all of these beads one more time with my needle. All of these beads. Hold on to that tail thread. And then this bead as well. And then like this. Give that a little bit of a tighten. Do you see how that drops that down there? Now, before I proceed, while these 2 threads are right next to each other, I'm just going to do a little knot. Just a little square knot or surgeon's knot, whichever you feel is more secure. And then I'm going to sew through these next 5 seed beads here and the pearl. I want to be coming out of my pearl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a pearl. All right, so now that I'm coming out of this pearl, after that has been attached to this guy here, I'm going to pick up 5 8/0 seed beads, a pearl, 5 8/0 seed beads, another pearl, and 5 8/0 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because what we're going to do right now is we're going to sew not just the first row of our knitting, we're going to do the first 2 rows of our knittings at the same time. So this next seed bead is for our second row, but this one is for our first row. So I'm just going to jump up here with my 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not 5, that's 4. You would think I would be better at counting by now. There we go. Now I have 5. And just like I did with this one, I'm going to go from left to right through this bead, but I'm not going to go through it twice. I'm only going to go through it once. I mean, you can go through it twice if you want to, but we don't really need to. I just want to make sure that I'm only going through that large bead and not through that seed bead that's next to it. Bloop, just like that. And the next thing I want to do is pick up 5 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to sew into this pearl here, not this pearl down here, this one that's closest to this guy that I just sewed into. And I'm going to, if I'm holding the pearl in front of it like this, if it's going like that, we're going to go from the bottom to the top. If it's to the side, it'll be from right to left. Either way, it's going to be going in this direction so that this thread makes a circle with both of these on either side and these two between them. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a tug to tighten that up. There we go. Our first row and our second row at the same time. I'm going to repeat that. I am going to repeat that several times until we get to the end, where I pick up 5 8/0 seed beads, 2, 3, 4, 5, a pearl, 5 8/0 seed beads, 2, 3, 4, 5, a pearl, and 5 8/0 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to sew through our large check glass bead all the way through. Pick up 5 more seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure it's actually 5, and then sew through that pearl that's right next to it. Bloop. One more time. Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a pearl. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a pearl. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to sew through that large bead. Pick up 5 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sew through that pearl. Just like that. I'm going to continue this till I get to the end. I'll meet you back here at the end and I'll show you how we're going to scooch on down to the next row and start adding our next rows. All right, so here we are. I have done that same repeat with the 5 8/0s, the pearl, the 5 8/0s, the pearl, and the 5 8/0s, and then sewn through my large bead. And this is the last one. I'm going to sew through it exactly the same way as the others. Only maybe I'm going to switch over to my more dexterous hand to do that. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did with the others, where I add 5 seed beads and sew through this pearl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just when I sew through the pearl, I'm going to do something a little bit different than I have before. I'm going to continue sewing through that pearl in exactly the same direction that I did before, only instead of continuing on from here by adding more seed beads and pearls and going on to the next bead in the row, I'm going to sew up through these 5 seed beads right here. I'm going to try to make sure that I'm in front of my work with my needle. And then I'm going to cross around to the back of my work and then sew down into those same seed beads that I just came up out of. What that's going to do is that's just going to have my thread cross over the beading wire right there. I'm not going to pull too tight because I don't want to break my thread, but I did just give it a little bit of a tug. And I'm going to go back down through all 5 of those beads and through this pearl. Actually, let's do the beads first, and then we can get to the pearl. Because my goal is going to be coming out of this pearl here. So I'm going to sew through this one that I'm right next to, through all 5 of these seed beads, and through that pearl down there. And that is the first step down to the next row. And that was the only time that we're going to step down like that. And it's just because that's where we're attaching it to our anchor point, our base, our foundation. For the rest of these, when we step down, it'll be a little switchback maneuver that I will show you when we get to the end of this next row. What I'm going to show you now is the easy part. This is literally the easiest thing that you'll be doing. We're going to pick up 5 seed beads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a pearl, and 5 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to sew right into and through that next pearl. And I'm just going to repeat that until I get to the end of this row, until I am going through this last pearl on this row. Remember, we did 2 rows, so this is our second row. When I go through this one, I'm going to stop and I will come back and I will show you what I'm doing. But I'm just doing 5 seed beads, a pearl, 5 seed beads, and then you sew right through that next pearl. All right, so here's the end. I went ahead and went through this last pearl here. I just added the 5 seed beads, pearl, 5 seed beads, sewed in through here. See how it's a little bit loose? I need to reverse this and come back down through these beads and these pearls so that I'm coming out of this pearl for the start of my next little row. So I'm going to sew up into just these 2 seed beads right here. You don't need to go very far. And then I'm going to skip this seed bead that I'm coming out of and sew right back down into the seed bead next to the pearl. And if you can angle your needle in such a way, you can go through that pearl and through all 5 of those seed beads. That should allow you to tighten that up. And you can't even tell we just skipped that 1 bead on the way back, but it's got thread going through the first time. Can't even tell that that's where we turned our thread around so that we could come back down through here. And so I'm ready to continue on adding my 5 seed beads, my pearl, my 5 seed beads, and sewing into each of these until I get to this pearl. And then I'll turn around the same way that I just did here. And then I'm going to just keep going. When I get to the end of the row that I have added 2 pearls. So this was 5 pearls. So the next row will be 4, and then it will be 3, and then it will be 2. After I finish that one with 2, I'm going to meet you back here, and we will start working on the row where we add the focal. Okay, so I have finished all of my rows, and when I got to the end of each of my rows, I went up just a couple of beads and then back down and through the next purl so that I could go jump down to the next row, and I just showed you how to do that. I just finished doing that on this row where I added 2 pearls. This is the last row where I'm adding these pearls. My next thing that I'm going to be adding is either going to be this pendant that I made in another video, or, and let me show you this one first before I show you the pendant, because the pendant is what I'm going to keep. But I'm going to show you this and then I'm going to take it out. So if you're not going to be doing the pendant, you can still add some things to this using some seed beads, another pearl, and one of these sparkly AB finish fire polish beads that we got with that. So we'll need some seed beads. You'll need some of these to do this. I'm going to pick up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the magic number for this project. 5 seed beads. I made a mistake. I'm picking up 6 seed beads. Sorry, so 1 more. And then I'm going to go down through one of these pearls. I'm going to pop a little seed bead on after that. And then I'm going to go through this fire polish bead and put another seed bead on this little group here. Now I want this to hang sort of like a pendant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this seed bead here at the end as my anchor. And I'm going to skip that seed bead. And I'm going to sew right back into that fire polish bead, that large, beautiful fire polish bead, that seed bead in between them, the pearl, and that 6th seed bead that I put on in that first little bit that I added. You know, I did 5 and then I was like, oh no, I need 6. That's what that was for. Because it's going to be the top of this little guy here, and you might have to finesse the thread in order to get it tightened up a little bit. But ultimately, you're going to have it like that, and then you're going to pick up 5 more seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sew through that next pearl over here. And then you're going to finish it up, and I'll show you in a minute how to finish it up. And that would give you a necklace quite like that. You might actually add a couple more seed beads, maybe 7. Yeah, I think 7 seed beads would give you a better drape where that's concerned. I think 7 instead of 6, just because you could use a little more space there. But I'm going to take my thread off of my needle, and I'm going to take that out because instead of doing this, I'm going to be adding this. So let's get this out of here. I just wanted to give y'all another option of a way that you could finish this necklace if you didn't want to make this pendant. And honestly, I think either way is going to be beautiful. Either way, it would end up being something that you could wear to the most elegant ball of the season. Alright, so I just took all of that out. I'm going to thread my needle again. Okay, so now that my thread is needled again, oh wait, no, my needle is threaded again. That's how it goes. Now I'm going to add this right here into the middle, and I'm going to do that by picking up 5 of these seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these round trios have 3 holes in them. I'm going through one of the outer holes here. I'm going to leave that center hole undone, and I'm going to sew through this top outer hole on this round trio. You can go through any of them that you want. And actually, I think I want more than 5 seed beads for this as well. So let me take that off of here. Let's do 7. So I'm going to add 2 more 8-ohs, 2 more 8-ohs. And then through that same hole that I just told you about. Perfect. That's going to hang so much better. Yes. And then 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Now this is the part where we can finish this up. Now all I'm going to do to finish this up is I'm going to sew all the way back up through this side, through every single one of these pearls and every single one of these seed beads until I get up here to this corner. Then I'm going to tie a knot with this guy, and we're going to sew our ends through our work a little bit and cut them off. So let's just go all the way back up through here. And this is what I would do whether I was using this pendant or using that other way of finishing this. So all the way back up through here. Come on. It's okay if you don't make it through like that many beads at once. You can do it a few beads at a time. That's fine. Just make sure you're not skipping any beads, and you should be fine, because that's always awkward, having skipped beads. Okay. Make sure that's tight. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'm going to tie a little knot here. I'm taking, no, let's leave that on just for a minute. And now I'm going to go just through the work a little bit to get my thread end further away from where my knot is. So back down and through here. Until I am coming out of this pearl here. I just want to come out of the pearl. I don't want to go through that seed bead too. There you go. And for this one, I've got just a little wide-eye needle so I can sew it through the work. This is my end that I started with. I want to weave that in. I mean, I could cut it there and burn it off, but I'm just going to put it through here a little bit. Oof. That one needle just is very resistant to being, or that one bead super resistant to being any other way than the way it is. All right, cut that off. Oh, friends. Here we go. I'm in love with it. I love it. I'm just going to admire this for a minute, but not too long because I do want to finish it. So let me just cut a little bit of a length of this curb chain. I think that should definitely be enough. Actually, it's a little on the strong side. There we go. Perfect. And I'm going to get it crimped onto this end. Crimp first. Oh boy, I'm so happy with the way this turned out. Like I said, this probably will not be the only one that is inspired by that necklace because, like I said, I'm obsessed. But I love the way this looks with the rainbowy colored seed beads, with the really gorgeous pendant that I made, with the pearls. The pearls are just, they class it up. Pearls always class things up. You know, that's just one of the things they do. All right, I was just adjusting that to where I can start crimping my wire. All right, perfect. All right, and I will show you on my weekly wrap up and chat tomorrow how this looks when it's worn. I hope y'all are having a wonderful weekend, and I hope you find some time to do something that brings you joy today. Have a happy weekend and happy beading.